Hello and welcome to the latest of my deep dive videos. This one into the Capricorn new moon of the 2nd of January in London, New York and Los Angeles, and the 3rd of January in Sydney and Delhi. Now what I'm going to do is explain what I feel a Capricorn new moon represents. I'm then going to go on to explain in detail the event based on Universal Central Time. So I will share the chart wheel on the screen at that point. Depending on where you're based in the world, on the screen now, I'm sharing those time zones. Once I've done that, I'm then going to go on to explore each of the 12 zodiac signs. And you can watch these based on your sun or your ascendant or both. It really is your choice. If you're new to my channel, please would you consider subscribing? This means every time I drop a video you'll get an alert from YouTube. Please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. Also, if you'd like to get your free daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning, join many others who've signed up for this service. I've been writing these for over 25 years and it's totally free. Please see the link beneath this video. If you want to understand what this year holds for you in terms of your zodiac sign, please see the link beneath this video. If you want to know what January holds for you in terms of your zodiac sign, please see the link beneath this video. And of course, this presentation is based on an analysis of the natal astrology, but then an interpretation of the sun sign astrology. If you want to rise above that and embrace more serious astrology, please share with me your time, date and place of birth. I'll provide to you a 12-month forecast from the time of the order, plus a character analysis and 30% off. This will give you searing insights into your year ahead. No two charts are the same, totally individual to each person. Now on the screen now you can see the event chart. Now for me, a Capricorn new moon is very much about our ambitions, our status in some ways in life, how we feel about structures like buildings and property. It can be about ambitions, but everyone's ambitions are different. And what makes this event quite so splendid is that Uranus, the planet of the unexpected and of freedom and of truth, is right high in the sky in the 10th house, as you can see where the arrow is pointing to now. The 10th house is very Capricornian, but that tells you that the world as a whole is in a state of turbulence and change, which Uranus can trigger. Of course, it's not at its best in the sign of Taurus, and it is reminding us not that we can get a climate change. Climate change can be a natural phenomenon, but global warming may be something that's man-made. So I think that Uranus in Taurus has been making us much more aware of how rapidly things are changing. But that angle between Uranus and the Sun is very inventive. It's very innovative, urging us to try out new approaches. But the way the world is, in some ways, we've got no option but to change, to flex. But we have to make sense of it through the prism of the earth sign of Capricorn, which is ruled by the strict energies of Saturn, and by Taurus, where Uranus is, which is very Venusian. It's a Venusian influence. So that's a real appreciation of the good things of life, but also Mother Earth itself. Now, you can see the ascendant for this event is Leo, which is quite gregarious, warm, very affectionate. But the real key, I feel, for this event is not just the sun's angle to Uranus. It's the fact that where the sun is located at 12 degrees 20, along with the moon, is actually governed by the 12th harmonic or dward that is influenced by Venus. Also, the second 10 degrees of the sign of Capricorn in terms of the decan is governed by Venus. So with Uranus in the sign that's governed by Venus, and we have a mutual receptiveness with the fact that Uranus is in the 10th house, and you can see all the planets along with the Sun, the Moon, the position of Venus and Pluto, Venus again in that conjunction in its retrograde, and also Mercury, which governs the sign of Gemini but also Virgo, and you can see all that stellium of energies is in the 6th house, very Virgoan. So what we've got here is a lot of Earth, but definitely a lot of Venusian energy. So that can give us the desire to explore our relationships, perhaps spend money, if we've got it, on some things that may have some lasting value. Very Capricornian. Of course, it's the winter sale, so a lot of people will be taking advantage of that, quite understandably. And with Uranus in the mix, technology could be something that's even more popular for people to snaffle. But you can see that the North Node is still, in terms of the true node, is still in the sign of Gemini. It doesn't move into Taurus until the 18th of January. But that's square into Jupiter, which has just moved into the second of its home zones of Pisces. It's going to be in Pisces and Aries this year, twice. So you can see that we have Jupiter and Neptune, the other ruler of Pisces, in the 8th house, money, longer term money. But then look at where Saturn is, right on the descendant, the 7th house cusp. And that's how we relate to others. And I think we have to expect that there's going to be some limitation due to the latest surge of Omicron. But the gathering of energies in the 6th house is saying to us that if we can adapt, we've all learnt a lot about how to deal with COVID over the last 2 or so years. So whether we're people that believe in vaccines or not, or people believe in social distancing or not, or believe in face masks or not, we're all adapting in our own way to the reality that's out there. But I would say there's an opportunity here to think very positively about our New Year's resolutions in terms of our physical health. But what Saturn's saying, especially in its square to Uranus, which is going to be within 3 degrees through to the 19th of January, what that's saying is that there can be a limitation in our worldly interaction. So freedom's going to be limited in our worldly interaction because of Uranus in the 10th house of the world, squaring with Saturn in the 7th house of relationships. But you can see in the 5th house of joys that the free-spirited sign of Sagittarius is in occupation of Mars, and that's actually forging a very delightful link to Saturn, and that's saying that the relationships that we work hard at can give us a reward. You can also see that Neptune is forging a magical link to Venus. If you're lucky enough to have got to know someone towards the end of last year, or as this year begins, where there really is that special sense of excitement, this relationship could have a very big impact on your future. But we can't get away from the fact that Chiron, the comet of healing, is in the 9th house. However much we want to connect with people or cultures or travel overseas, maybe Chiron in the 9th house is just saying to us that for now, well, we can't, especially with the square with the new moon. So there are some complexities in this chart. Also the North Node squaring with Jupiter. So I feel our desire to be free-spirited around travel, which Jupiter governs, is definitely limited by a need to be very connected to information. All the information that we're discovering all the time is constantly going to be changing. But that toward that influences the new moon in Venus, the second decan, Venus conjoining with Pluto in Capricorn, very earthy, very sensual, but can also lead to leverage around the wrong kind of relationships, or even a financial situation or a business one. The 6th house is about work. So I think generally work, structure, organisation and health are opportunities for us if we adapt, but there is going to be some challenges in our ability to connect to others almost immediately. But my honest prediction is that I think there's going to be a pushback on this last wave of COVID a bit quicker than people think. I think by about the start of March things will be easier. But Saturn and Uranus do come back within 3 degrees from August, about the 3rd week of August, to the end of November again. So there may be another wave, another variant that comes back then. But I think it's all about, this is something that mutates, it changes, and therefore our reactions and responses to it will change as well. But if we want to really be thinking about new ways to get fitter or to work, or how we can use technology or new medicines, just fresh approaches in general. Uranus is linked to the new moon, gives us a glorious opportunity over the next month to reinvent, refresh things, try things in different ways, and that can be very uplifting indeed. Now, please stay with me for your individual zodiac signs, beginning with Aries. For you, because Mars, your ruling planet, is in your 9th house of travel and forging a brilliant link with Saturn, the planet of structure, in your sector of friendship, I think it's possible that you will be making some very concrete connections to people. It's just you may not be able to activate some of the physical changes to, meet up. And also with Jupiter and Neptune in your 12th house, you're being asked for the whole of this year to be much more in touch with your inner voice. We all have it and we all ignore it from time to time. But there may be a part of you that does want to be a bit more reflective about the type of work you do, especially if you're not really fulfilled, or due to COVID you've lost your job and you're having to really think quickly about how you can adapt. Don't discount the potential for self-employment, because this chart is very positive for that if you can push yourself into the belief that you can do it. It may not be nothing to do with your skill set, it's more to do with the belief that you have the aptitude to do it. Or perhaps you've been comfortable in a bigger organisation, but I think Mars being in that buccaneering part of your chart is saying, look, if there's someone you can collaborate with, you have an instinct, go for it. It could work out really well for you. Now, if you are in a bigger organisation, you may be asked to be very flexible over the next month, and that could be challenging. I totally understand that. But do think about how you can freshen up things. Even your relationship to your job, even if you've been in it a long time, your relationship can be revised on the back of this new moon. Now, Taurus, for you, the collection of energy in the sign of Capricorn is very much about travel, expansion, and adventure. And of course, with Uranus in your sign, that's really feeding into the narrative that maybe you can be more daring than you have ever before. But the natural instincts of a lot of Taurus people is to stick with what you know and what you feel comfortable with. So what I would say to you is this is an opportunity to think again about your attitude to flexing and freedoms and stability, but particularly around your job. Because if you're in a job where you feel really penned in, limited, frustrated, this is definitely the time to take a walk into the bright sunlight of change. And with Jupiter in your sector of the future and friendships and group associations, that's a wonderful platform to be charging forwards in this next month. Now, Gemini, for you, a lot of intensity, a lot of psychological energy. There's the potential to do well around anything to do with the internet, blogging, publishing, because of Mercury and also Saturn being in your personal 9th house. What about Uranus? Well, Uranus is saying that you have to embrace that hidden shadow, psychological, or even part of your nature that you're not even conscious of. People may be letting you know, they may be delivering their truth to you, and it could be quite startling. Something needs to transform in your situation. With Mars in your sector of relating, is it a relationship? I don't know. Only you can answer that question. But with Jupiter high in the sky, you can do very well this year in terms of your professional hopes. But I think you're wanting to feel more appreciated, and you're wanting to, it's almost like, show me the money. You want to see the money. You want to feel that you're worthwhile. And if through your glorious set of skills and creativity, you can manifest the money over the next month, you'll be delighted. But I think you need to tune in to your psychological side to really tap in to the well of talents fully that you have. Now, Cancer, the collection of energy in the sign of Cancer points towards relationships, People write to me and say, I'm not in a relationship. I don't want to be in a relationship. You are in a relationship. You're in a relationship with yourself. You're in a relationship with me if you express that sentiment. We're all in relationships of some kind of another. No person is an island. So whether it's how you relate to colleagues, your family members, how you relate to people just in a shopping centre, if you're holding the door open or not, that's all relating. What's your expectations around relationships? What do you want to give around relationships? These are all the questions that this new moon is asking you, especially with the intensity of Venus on Pluto. And I think with Uranus being in the place it is, it's very progressive in the 11th house for you. It's very much about being future orientated, but it's also about freedom. So with Saturn in a tense, brittle, abrasive right angle with Uranus, if for you changing things up means that you escape some kind of tie or tether, maybe around a close romantic relationship, maybe around a relationship with your employer, you may have been there for years. They're all relationships, so that's what you need to be thinking about and actively exploring the potential for change and refreshment over the next month. So Leo for you, whole load of energy in the 6th house, but Saturn in the 7th of relating, clashing with Uranus in the part of your scope to do with your connection with the wider world. This chart is saying that you're doing everything to try to be as productive, efficient, as pleasing and supportive to others. But if you're not feeling recognised for all that give, it's going to leave you feeling like you've got a big deficit. Mercury, however, because it's just on the cusp of your 7th, is saying to you, try to pick things apart in a detached way. The 6th house, where all that energy is quite narrow, so it can see us looking at bits of situations and not things in totality. So try to look at the big picture. Mars is actually forging a wonderful angle to Saturn. So if there is someone in your life, perhaps you've met in a very mundane location, that's really exciting you, don't dismiss it just because the stars in general are saying focus on practicalities, healthcare, diet, nutrition, life organisation. I know they're all totally and utterly boring, aren't they? But all totally and utterly compelling and so important to give us the platform to really flourish. So there's a great opportunity with the right relationships where there's mutual cooperation and respect for what each person invests, not necessarily on a quid pro quo basis, but if there is a relationship where it's all give and no get, it's definitely coming under the astral microscope over the next 4 weeks. Now, that brings us to Virgo. Virgo, there's loads of energy in your 5th house, all about demonstrating your skill, your flair, your talent. You can be a great maker, you can be a brilliant hobbyist, anything to do with adaptation or improvement to where you're living, but in a creative way, is really going to be exciting for you. With Jupiter having moved into your sector of relationships and all this 5th house energy, if you are single and you'd like to meet somebody, well, it could happen over the next 4 weeks, but it could happen just when you're least expecting it. I wouldn't try too hard. The electric energy of Uranus brings things to pass at the speed of light. And it's in your 9th house, so it's prodding you to be open to new people, new approaches. Don't take the same well-trodden path. Be as open-minded as possible in your approach. It is true that Saturn is still in your 6th house, so that's emphasizing that if you're trying to do too much, spread yourself too thin in its square with Uranus, that could create a bit of stress. So you need to narrow your focus onto the things which you find fulfilling, compelling and inspirational. If it's too practical, the very things that you're so gifted at, it could steal your energy in quite a way, which brings us to Libra. So Libra, all that energy in the 4th house, what a time it's been over the last few years. You've learned loads about, like I have, family, boundaries, where you live, your environment, anything to do with wanting to be near nature, all become very important. Huge transformations. The fact that Mars is in your third house of chat, forging a brilliant link with Saturn in your fifth house of profound connected relationships, that could be good. Could be some creative messages going backwards and forwards around work, or it could be an attraction to someone. Mercury is also just nibbling into your fifth house, giving you an uplift with your sense of humour. But Uranus is where you're most invested, and that angle to Saturn suggests if it's a lot of give, especially creatively, and not a lot of finance coming in, that may be something you need to look at. But a lot of Librans will be thinking about renovation, downsizing, upsizing, moving. You know, we've just adapted where we live in and put basically 2 new rooms in. And, you know, obviously we haven't been here long. So that energy of change is still ongoing, particularly with your ruler right beside Pluto. What do I think that means in terms of the retrograde for you? Well, it's possible that you could feel that it's difficult to break away from a situation, which gives you some qualities. You know, Librans can sometimes avoid confrontation, but once you get fired up and you really find your voice about an injustice, I think you can actually be a lot more effective. So if you feel that someone's being utterly charming in order to sort of like win over your goodwill and they weren't very pleasant before, I wouldn't just cave in and instantly let them back in. You need to be sure that there has been a profound change before you do that. Scorpio, such a lot of energy, including your modern higher octave ruler of Pluto in your third house of everyday communications. But Mars in your second house suggests you're getting it together with the Lutes. It's forging a great link with Saturn, so maybe something to do with working from home or adapting a property. There can be a greater connection with neighbours or siblings or your ideas. If you wanted to write something, it can really flourish now. Jupiter is in a glorious location. Could bring some extra magic into an existing relationship or bring someone special into your world this year. Uranus is in your seventh house. So it's in a close emotional relationship. Its clash with Saturn is kind of saying where there's a lot of responsibility and a lot of confinement. You can't breathe, but you don't seem to really get much acknowledgement back. You're wanting to hear messages from others, not just send them. That's essentially what the message of this new moon is. But if there's someone you can partner up with in an inspired way, the next month can be really exciting. And that doesn't have to be only in a romantic context. It could be about work or a hobby where you both have different skills that you can collectively apply. Sagittarius. Well, I've said to you before that there is a shift going on, an improvement around finance. It doesn't mean to say it's going to be absolutely perfect, but Mars in your own sign is pushing you to really listen to your instincts and be daring, something you have a natural gift for. You're being battered by Saturn going through your sign and also Capricorn over the last few years. Now it's in the sign of Aquarius. Yes, it is saying choose your words carefully, particularly in that clash with Uranus. If you're too blunt, which you have a tendency to be at times, and don't think about how it may be read or perceived or appears, and it's not actually taken into account a wider set of circumstances, because Uranus is in your sixth house, which can narrow your perspective, not widen it, something you generally have a gift for. So do continue to see the big picture, but I think something could be transforming around your finances. And I think if you're open to a new way of working, starting your own business, then the next month looks very exciting indeed, which brings us to Capricorn. So a wonderful new moon because you can set your intentions to be totally uniquely you. But you know, that's quite a challenge for Capricorns, because your way of being, it won't be true of every Capricorn, because some people's birth charts will really push them to be much more daring and individualistic and bold. But generally, the tone for your sign is one of steadfast reliability. You're the person who keeps it all together in situations because you're very hard working, but you also understand the heritage of situations, the history, the structure, and you know, you're a quiet but effective leader. But I think what this new moon is saying to you, terror, the rule book. You know, approach things in a completely fresh way, whether it's your makeup, your hair, your dress, the things you buy from the sales in terms of fashions and colours and palettes, or in terms of your home furnishings, or in terms of using your talents. Be more individualistic and have the confidence to be so. Yes, you've got to be careful not to spend money too freely on things that don't have a fundamental core value. Saturn, your ruler, squaring with Uranus. So if you splash out money on something that doesn't have that innate practical value, I think you may regret it. With Jupiter in your third house, you can express yourself with more passion, and I think that there can be some lovely connections for you with people immediately around you. Your leadership qualities are definitely very much to the fore. Is there a snag? Well, Mars in the 12th house, and of course as we went into the new year, the moon was there, so therefore the midpoint, and also the solar eclipse which occurred on the 4th of December, they're all saying to you, don't ignore the tender side of yourself and others. So take a growing appreciation of the psychological reality of us all, emotions, feelings, sensitivities, anxieties. Embrace all of these, but channel your individuality with them coming alongside, and you're really going to flourish in the first month of this year. Which brings us to Aquarius. Now, Mercury has just made its way into Aquarius, which is good. Of course, it's in shadow. It goes retrograde on the 14th in Aquarius. It moves back into Capricorn. I think it's on the 27th of January. But the sun moves into Aquarius on the 20th. So I think that this new moon is one of the more challenging ones of the year, to be honest. It is about a reflective back on the past. Perhaps there's some events or sentimental energies coming up that you need to reflect on. Mars is actually in a brilliant location because for you that's your 11th house, very much in keeping with your sign, very future orientated. So when you're thinking that Mars is forging a great link with Saturn, where you've really done your research and you're very clear on the steps you want to take forwards, you can use your instincts, the 12th house where all that Capricorn energy is, to really steer yourself in the right direction, and if you get it right, you can take a big step forwards. But I still feel if you're living somewhere or you're surrounded by people you don't like very much, or it's cramped or too spacious or too noisy or too quiet, depending on the type of things you personally want, I think that can be hard. And I think all this energy in the 12th house can be bringing up thoughts of people who are no longer with us, people you're separated from, really quite nostalgic in some ways. So just be conscious of that. In a relationship which has been bumping along the bottom all over Christmas time, and perhaps you've really had to grit your teeth, you could be thinking of saying au revoir, but no one's going to leave your life unless that's truly right for you. But I think Venus on Pluto is interesting. What's going on there? And perhaps the fact that Uranus is in a square with Saturn, especially if Saturn's right on a personal planet, not just the sun, but beyond that, which is possible, then you may feel quite hemmed in. If someone's not tuning into you, the more tender side of your nature, that could give you the need to escape that feeling of feeling penned in and not really being able to breathe. So an interesting month in store for Aquarius people, but it will start to pick up a lot from the 20th. Which brings us to Pisces. So the big thing to celebrate is your ruler Jupiter, your traditional ruler, returning to your sign. This happened in the last 3 days of last year. It is forging a square to the North Node in your 4th house. One of the things that I find that a lot of YouTube astrologers tend to say that Jupiter is absolutely amazing. Well, Jupiter can definitely be helpful. That square to the North Node shows that even though you might start something fresh off and it may be linked to where you live, have reasonable expectations. But broadly, that square can be of help to you, I feel. The fact that Saturn is locked away in your 12th house and is in a right angle to Uranus, that does point towards perhaps a need for isolation or feeling not so good about yourself, your self-image. Conversations with people that drain you should be avoided at all costs. If you stick to the people that inspire you, and there are going to people who inspire you, you can do very well. Also with Mars high in the sky, if you've got a real clear idea of what you want to achieve this year, your leadership credentials are very much to the fore, as will be your self-confidence. So go for it. But generally, your connections to others are very important. But I feel that anyone you're not sure of, you may frankly be trying to remove them from your life at some kind of level. I'd like to wish you a very happy new year, a brilliant Capricorn new moon, good luck and goodbye for now.